Hey guys, what you're about to watch is an interview I did with haremlit author F.G. Smith. We sat down last night and talked about his work, his previous books, how he got started into haremlit, how he found it, and what got him writing on his own, and about things that he does that sort of help him in his process. And I think that you're going to like this interview. The last interview I did with was Neptunus Ludes was much more about the publishing side of things for indie authors, but this is much more in detail about how he does his thing. And we talked a little bit about how our techniques are similar. And then he also goes into what he's got coming up in the future and then just a few random things here and there. So I hope you like it. And I look forward to bringing you more of this content in the future. So leave a comment, let me know, and hopefully we'll have another one of these out for you soon. All right, enjoy. All right, hi everybody. Devon here, and back with my second interview. We're talking to F.G. Smith today. I got some really good feedback and things from the interview I did with Neptunus Ludes a month or two ago, and so I'm going to try to keep it rolling as often as I can find somebody to sit down with me. And FG agreed to be my second guy on here. Him and I have been talking a lot off and on over the last few years. He's helped me a lot with ideas for my book. I kind of sit around and let him bounce ideas off of me, and we've been kind of like having a steady chat going off and on, and so it'd be great to get him on. And if you're not familiar with his books, to introduce him to you guys, and I think you'll probably find some stuff you like in there. So we're gonna get into it. FG, welcome aboard.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So I want to be conscious of your time, so we're gonna try to move through this pretty quickly. Um, so yeah, tell us a little bit about you and your journey into Harem Lit, how you found it, how you decided to start writing into it, and how it's been going for you so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So I discovered haremlit in it was the start of 2023, and I've been writing since about mid 2023. So it's 2026 now. In that time, I've written 9 books, 7 of which are released, and then one of which is coming out this summer, and then or 2 of which are coming out this summer. Excuse me. And the other remaining 7 are already available, and they are across 2 different series. Um, I really discovered haremlit kind of by accident. At the start of 2023, I was reading a lot of books. I just had a kid, so he was sleeping on my chest a lot, and it's not like if you've ever had a kid or if anybody's reading that's had a kid, you can't really like watch movies or play video games with them on top of you, because that tends to wake them up, and you never want to wake the baby. So I ended up reading quite a bit, and I stumbled across a book by Bruce Centaur. It was Dragon's Justice. That was my first book. I was just kind of going through. I was firing through Amazon, downloading books at a mad pace because I was reading quite a bit.
Was
And
it the
that
booby
was
cover that got you?
it was the booby cover that got me. I'm not even gonna try and sugarcoat
No,
that.
it's it
That
got me
was
too. I
absolutely it.
was doing like lit
Oh,
RPG in the early days, and then the somehow it detected the crossover, and I was like, oh, those are some nice boobs. Okay, so it
those
works.
are it has a girl with boobs on the front. Let's go.
Yeah.
And honestly, it was really eye-opening. I loved the entire Dragon's Justice series. I At the time it wasn't completely done, but I blew through I think the first 6 books in 6 days. um, and then I went back and read Bruce Centaur's other stuff. Like I read Saving Supervillains, and I read even some of his Mana series. Like that was already out at that point. At the time, for a little while, I thought he was like the only person who was writing in this space. Um, and until Amazon started recommending folks like Virgil Knightley and Misty Vixen and a couple of others. And then I noticed that there was a Discord link in the back of the chat, and or in the back of the book rather. So I joined the Discord, and then I discovered that actually this is a whole subgenre of authors, and there's a lot of really really awesome authors out there who are writing in this space, and that the community around it has been absolutely wonderful. And so that's really how I started discovering it, and people kept recommending new books to me, and since then I just haven't stopped reading.
Right on. And so when did reading sort of transition into, oh, I think I can do this too? Like, had you done writing
Yeah,
before, or was it just something like first time ever, I'm going to write a book?
yeah, it was so I had written a couple of short stories, but I'm talking like, 1,000 to 2,000 words before, under a different pen name on a different platform. And but I'd never kind of considered writing a book. What ended up happening was, as I was reading through these books, I usually take notes on, like, very, very brief notes, one or two bullet points on, like, each book that I read. I would just write it down into a notes thing in on my phone. What did I like? What was good? What wasn't? And did I like this author? Did I like this book? Whatever. Um, and that helped kind of guide my exploration into new authors. And those notes kind of evolved over time into, well, here's some themes I like, and here's some ideas that I like, and it'd be really cool if this author did this instead, because I think that this plot twist would have worked better this way or whatever. And over time, those thoughts and those ideas sort of morphed into an outline, and then I was like, well, you know what? I'm here anyways. I may as well, like, I've got an outline. I like the outline. Why don't I try my hand at writing? And from there, that's how Royal Blooded was born. That was the very first of it. So you can, if you've ever read it, and I know that you have,
I
and,
did.
and
Yeah, I
other
read the
people are
first two
reading.
books. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So if you've ever read it, and if you've read kind of Dragon's Justice, you'll see that there's been some comparisons between the two, because while the characters are very different, and the worlds are very different, some of the themes remain the same. It's paranormal fantasy, takes place on Earth, but has magic elements, and um uh so, like, from that perspective, like, those first few books really influenced me, and you can see how those notes start to uh, kind of bleed into my own writing. Um, so that's really how I got started. It was sort of by accident. I didn't go into it meaning to write a book, and then it just kind of happened.
Okay. So I am kind of curious because, like, obviously you've got the family, and like, did you, if you want to talk about it, I don't know, if did you go to your wife and
Yeah.
you was like, hey, I think I'm going to write some men's romance with fantasy and harem and all these girls, and like, was she like, oh, that sounds awesome, or like, I didn't know you were into that, and like, was that a conversation you had?
That was a conversation that we had, after I'd written the outline, and then I had spoken to her about it, because, like, I didn't, again, this sort of happened by accident. I didn't really go into this thinking I was going to write a full book.
Mm,
Um, but what I discovered, while writing and while reading, was that, um, the the process, like the creative process, was something very different than kind of my day job. It was very different from everything else in my life, and it was something that was just kind of for me. Like, I wasn't doing it for anybody else specifically. I was doing it because I liked it, and because I felt good, and it was something, it was a hobby that I could enjoy, that um, had no other impact. Like, it was a hobby that I could enjoy, and it was good for me. And it was, a stressful time in my life because we got a new kid, so it was good to have that kind of an outlet, right?
mm,
So she was very supportive, and she said, like, listen, if this is something that makes you happy, you should do it. Just, like, don't go into it expecting to become, an author millionaire,
yeah.
overnight, or anything like that. Like, that's not how this works. And I was very realistic about that. It was, this was always just meant to be something that I did for myself, because it made me feel happy. And as lame as that sounds, like, that's exactly what that was the beginning, middle, and end of it to me. Like, so I talked to her. She was very supportive of that, and she was supportive of me having an outlet to work through the daily stress of being a working parent and becoming a first time parent, and things generally went well. Now, the benefit is, I'd say the benefit is, or the reason that she was so supportive, excuse me, was, she reads as well. She reads women's romance, and I think, kind of generally, men's romance gets a, I'm not going to set a bad reputation, but sometimes it's kind of, you know, people who don't read it kind of look down on men's romance because they say, oh well,
Yeah, that
there
is kind of a
there's
weird
these
double
rules.
standard that we have
It
to
is, right?
deal with. Yeah.
And and like they look at it and they're like, oh well, you're talking about polygynous relationships or polyamory, or you're dealing with you there's explicit sexual scenes and there's this and that, and they kind of poke at it, and like sure there's to some, and I think people look at that and they're like, well, you that means that you must want that in your real life. And while I think it's healthy as human beings to have fantasies, like that's normal for every human being. And I would also point to the fact that like women's romance, if you've ever read a women's romance book, which my wife has, and I read a few to understand,
Mm.
um, they tend to also have some questionable content or some
Oh yeah,
content
no,
that
they're
people.
famous for it at this point.
So I would say like yeah, like is it weird? Is it maybe a bit weird that I write men's romance? Sure, but it's no more weird than women's romance or any other romance. So like
But and yeah, I think when
that's
you
it's okay.
compare the content of like what tends to happen
Oh
in
yeah,
women's romance, and by comparison, like at least the stuff I've read, I don't know if there's some wilder stuff out in the haremlit genre that I just haven't come across with it. I mean, besides the nature of the multiple women, it's fairly tame. I mean, okay, you've got, some threesome scenes or something like that. But even with my own book, like I didn't go hard into kink. There was a kink aspect I wanted to put into it. It was like, no, I got to pull back because
yeah.
it's gonna. So yeah, everybody I've read, yeah, okay, it's almost always explicit sex. I don't know if I've ever read a specific FTB like Fade to Black author. Is he Fade to Black?
No, he's not Fade to Black,
Who
but
is the big author
like
that's Fade to Black?
there's at least one that I can't remember. I can't
Yeah,
recall his
he
name. I
like
know
he
that's gonna
went to
bother you,
Fade to
but yeah,
Black. I always forget his name. He went to Fade to Black, I guess, for like personal reasons.
yeah,
But yeah, anyway,
which is like fine. That's a choice.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
if that's what your
Um,
readers want.
I actually had that conversation with my editor once. He's like, honestly, your book works fine without the sex scene. I don't think you need the sex. The tone is so off with your book. I was like, hey, but
But I want them.
yeah, but it's anybody that I've read, yours included. It's nothing freaky. It's
No, I
explicit,
mean,
but and yeah, and I kind of agree with you. Like again, that sort of stigma that we get where somehow like we understand that fantasy and reality are separate from for every other situation, porn and whatnot. But then suddenly, yeah, if
yeah.
oh, what are you reading? Oh, so you just want like eight women in your bed? I mean, yeah, kind of, but no,
I mean,
obviously reality comes in there. But yeah, so yeah, I think you bring up that is a weird sort of thing that happens. But that's one of the things I hope this series sort of accomplishes is sitting down with authors and talking about the process. And like, look, we're just creatives, we're just doing something.
it's not.
And
This is not like meant to be, bashing women's romance or anything. Because like
yeah.
I don't want to come out off as like a misogynist or anything like
Yeah,
that.
and I'm
Because
just I'm only bringing it up as
there,
a double standard
yeah,
that sort of
no, you're
happened.
right.
Yeah.
There are, and there are, there are good women's romance novels out there. But like you point to something like the most popular women's romance novel in the world, or at least it was for a while, 50 Shades of Grey,
Yeah.
right? Let's point to that as an example. Like the main character is a billionaire who ends up hooking up with his employee. Okay, well, like that's very problematic in a lot
Yeah,
of
a little
different ways. Like
some ethics violations in there or something.
there's ethics
And
violations,
now
and
I,
there's
I never read that
also
book, but wasn't she like this girl from like the farm or something, like moved to the big city and this is
exactly, yeah,
so yeah, there's a
there's
huge power imbalance there.
absolutely. So
Yeah.
like, and I don't say that to like bash 50 Shades of Grey or anything, because if you like it, you like it, that's fine. But
Yeah.
I do it to point out that like, yeah, there's there might be some some sexual fantasy content in both of our books and in many other haremlit books. But that's no different from the fantasy content in women's romance books.
Yeah.
They're just the fantasies are just fantasies, and it's normal and healthy and human to have those fantasies. That you just need to know where the line is and between fantasy and reality, exactly as you said.
Yeah. And the like when I started again, it was sort of the inspiration for doing this sort of thing to begin with was because when I got
Yeah,
started, I looked around and there were almost no interviews with any harem lit authors at all. There was very little public presence for anybody.
Yeah.
I looked on YouTube, I looked on Instagram. I have TikTok now. I haven't used it yet, but I'm going to start, doing stuff on TikTok. As much as I hate the platform, but it
Yeah,
just, but yeah, but all of these things exist for women's romance in droves. I mean, a lot of book talk and bookstagram is women's romance.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, hopefully, it grows. I mean, as you can see, obviously, our genre is certainly growing. Lit RPG is huge. And
Yes.
that's, with the success of things like Dungeon Crawler Carl and He Who Fights with Monsters, it's bringing it more into the
Yes.
mainstream and getting picked up by major publishers and stuff like that. So, I'm sure it'll trickle down into our neck of the woods because there is so much crossover. Um, but okay,
I think.
so yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think the the explosion in books targeted towards men, and this is where I'll give a little bit of credit to Gen Z. You and I are of a certain generation.
Gen
I'm
X
going to
represent.
say, yeah, Gen X represent. Very broadly we were born 80s 90s basically, and our generation I think was brought up with a certain expectation about what constitutes a good book and what constitutes a quote unquote bad book, and
Mm,
we were dissuaded from reading certain books even if we liked them or did certain styles of book because in school we were taught Shakespeare is good book and thou shalt read Shakespeare, and
literature.
literature, you should aspire to read literature. And I think that the next generation, and I see this in like younger members of my family and even people who I work with that are a little bit younger than I am, Gen Z, um, they've kind of dispensed with that notion, and there's not as much of this idea that like literature is what's important. The important part is just learning to read and enjoying reading, and having that being part of your habit. And as a result, we've seen explosion of men in particular starting to read, and the younger generation starting to read and having books that are catered to that generation,
Mm.
catered to things that they would like, things like lit RPG. And hopefully, as they get a little bit older in their 20s, then they start to read that carries over into men's romance as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I remember because we are older, I remember when Harry Potter exploded and there
Yeah.
were the literature people who said, well, it's sort of worthless and it's derivative and it's all of these things.
Yep.
And the other side was like, well, look how much the kids are reading. So shut up, they're reading books, and this was as the internet was
What do you
just,
want?
yeah,
Yeah.
being born. And yeah, this, for those of you who weren't around then or who maybe don't have very clear memories, this is early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s when Harry Potter just sort of exploded and it was everywhere in Harry Potter mania. And that was a big part of the conversation because on one side you had these people, yeah, but they're reading crap. It's like, who cares? They're reading. And it's a positive story and it's got good themes and good messages. So who cares if it's a Star Wars ripoff or something like that?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So now to go back into how you do your thing, walk us through your process from the idea, the concept of the story, and then to how you like, we talk a lot about outlining. It comes up all the time. Should I outline? Should I not?
Mhm.
Like and then also how much of yourself do you think you put into these characters? Not just the MC, but because of this always, it's self-insert, and this it's what you want to do. But like, how does that work for you? Like, how is your
Yeah.
process sort of carrying you through the task of birthing a book?
It's a really good question, and I think it's kind of evolved over time because as I get a little bit as I start to take my craft a little bit more seriously, and as I learn more and make a deliberate effort to kind of become a better writer, it has changed. And in speaking to other people, that I've adopted their techniques as well, or learned from other people who are better at writing than I am, or have been at least been doing it longer. So I'll shout out Misty Vixen here, who was very, very kind and kind of outlined her process, and I've stolen some of her ideas. And there's also a fairly well-known, at least within the writing community, there's a well-known lecture series by Brandon Sanderson. It's on YouTube. It's for free. And I stole some of his ideas as well in terms of like how do you come up with a book. But so to answer your question more directly, the usually I start out with 2 to 3 sentences. Can I describe the idea of a series in 2 to 3 sentences?
The quote unquote
Um,
elevator pitch.
exactly. Can I nail that elevator pitch? Do I have a really, really strong idea of an elevator pitch? And it doesn't have to be complicated. Um, you could do as an example, your elevator could pitch could be like uh, Harry Potter, but make it haremlit,
Mm.
right?
Which would be
Or
so many
you
of
know,
the,
uh,
the school series or the what are they called? Academy series and things
exactly.
like that.
There's
Yeah.
a whole bunch of Academy series. Bruce Centaur has one as well that I read through. I should have shouted that out. But like Harry Potter, but make it haremlit. Okay, that's your starting point, or whatever your 2 sentence, 3 sentence starting point is. And then I try to iteratively build from there. Can I turn those 2 or 3 sentences into like a one paragraph outline of the plot? And then from there, can I start to build, I iterate on that, and can I start to build in different, can I start to build in, a larger outline? How do I expand on that paragraph? How do I fill in the blanks in between each of the major plot points? What are the major plot points that I want to hit if it's a book or throughout a series? I tend to outline a series and then I break it into books because
Mm.
I don't like to I don't like to write one-off books. Like I prefer to write series.
Does
Um,
anybody write one-offs in the genre?
I've seen a few, but typically a one-off tends to mean that the series didn't perform well and the author abandons it,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
like I would
Uh,
associate one-offs more with like just mono romance, but I don't know.
there's at least one or two that I can think of, but it's rare. Normally,
Yeah.
you end up, with especially with haremlit, you end up with a series, and especially in the genre that you and I tend to write in, the kind of this epic fantasy genre,
Mm.
or even science fiction or any other genre, really. There's quite a bit of overhead. I'll use that term, overhead in terms of describing the world and the rules of the world and how does the world work and what are the nations and political economy and so on and so forth. And if you're just doing that for one book, you're spending all that time and energy just to describe it in one book, but you're never using it again in a second book.
Yeah.
It feels like a waste, right? But if you set some of that world building up in book one, then you can call upon that throughout a series, and you can build upon that, and that provides a really nice kind of progression. So, anyways, I digress.
Yeah. Sorry.
And so you start out with your elevator pitch, 2 to 3 sentences. You build it into a paragraph with some major plot points, and then from there I build that into an outline. And usually once I go from a paragraph to an outline, that's where I start to draw out some of the world building. I'll create separate usually it's a separate document or a separate note that's attached to this one around, here's some major characters. Here's the main character. Here are the love interests. Here's some minor characters as I'm building out that outline. I'll usually make a page about, what is if there's specific nations or there's specific worlds or whatever. I'll make a page for each one of them saying, 2 to 3 sentences about each, kind of describing them, um, and it becomes this iterative process where the outline becomes more and more real. It becomes more and more tangible. Um, it gets fleshed out over time. And I keep going back to that outline over and over again and building out all of these pieces to go around it, until I'm satisfied with where it is. From there, what I try to do, and you've been my willing volunteer for this in the past, so I thank you for that.
No, yeah, sure.
What I try to do is I run the outline by a couple of other people, and I say, hey, does this make sense? Does this pass the sniff test? Is this good? Is this interesting? What do you think? Um, and
Yeah,
I'll
I know with
usually
the
do a
last one you
couple of
sent me, you were like looking for something very specific, and
I
you wanted to see
was, and
if
I
I'm not
prefer
gonna.
not
Well, I'm not
you.
gonna give it away, but you're like, does it?
Yeah,
Did you notice anything? How did you? And I was like, no. They're like, oh, it's this. I was like,
that's exactly,
oh,
yeah.
okay, now I get it. So,
Yeah, 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 exactly. So, um, There's a couple, like I'll go through that process with a couple of folks, and make sure that they're comfortable. Like I'm comfortable with the feedback. Usually I'll make a couple of tweaks, and then from there I'll have a really nice outline. Sometimes I break it into specific chapters, although I'm starting to move away from that. And for the last one, I moved away from that entirely because uh, the chapters will kind of fall where they will, and I would rather have like a really nice outline. And then from there, it's pull up a Word document and start writing the actual manuscript.
Mm.
Um, what I found, one of the other things that I've found really, really helpful is I use AI in very specific ways. So I don't use AI to write for me. Um, I will use AI as an example. I will feed in descriptions into Gemini or ChatGPT or whatever of minor characters, people that I wouldn't commission an actual piece of art for, but minor characters just as a reference document, because and then it'll generate me images for a minor character,
That's
or
interesting. I
you
never thought
know
about doing that.
an image for a specific place or a specific item or whatever, and I will stick that into my world building notes because it becomes much easier to reference that later. If you have a named minor character in book one, and then you call them back in book three, then you're kind of you're starting to write the scene in book three, and you're scratching your head. You're like, what color eyes did they have,
Mm.
or how were they? What did their clothing kind of look like, or stuff like that. You don't necessarily, as an author, if you're when you're writing, you may not remember every single detail about every single minor character. The main ones you probably know off the top of your head, but the minor ones, the little ones, you might not know. And it's much easier to go pull up your world building notes, look at a picture that's been generated by AI, and be like, oh, okay, he had blue eyes and he was about 5'6", and his ears look like this. Cool. Now I can write that scene very confidently, and your character descriptions tend to become much more consistent. Same
Oh,
if you're
okay.
describing an item or a place or whatever else. So I use AI in very specific ways to help me remember those things and solidify those details.
No, that's actually, I said, I think that's really cool because it's been my book, a big cast,
Yeah,
and I'm bad about making notes about little things. My editor got on me. He's like, you get names wrong all the time, like the names of a city or name of. It's like, yeah, because I forgot
yeah,
to write it down and I didn't remember what it was. And multiple times as I get ready to write the next book, I have to go back into the older book and like, wait, what was the name of that thing that I gave? Because I don't, sometimes I'll come up with it in the moment. And
yeah.
I'll be in the zone, and I don't make a notation. Okay, the name of this thing in this city was this, and then
Yeah.
10 chapters later, or the next book is like, oh, I need that name again. What the fuck was it? So no,
Or like
I like that. I might do that for my next series. Is like,
what was the
is
name of that spell, or what was the name of that,
yeah.
you know, yeah, I
And
this
it's even
person,
worse for me because I put multiple languages in Throne. So we've got Dwarvish and we've got Elvish and we've got Draconic and we've got the demon language. And so I'm like,
oh my
I
gosh,
blended them
yes.
all together in some places because I came at it from a point of, well, these cultures have been living side by side. These languages would have merged. So you would have
Yes.
influences from this and from that. And so I was like, that's what I used AI for, was like a language translator.
Yep. Yep.
And so it's not just like, oh, this is spoon. No, this I use a mix of Draconic and Elvish, and I said this, and what the fuck was that? So yeah,
No,
that's cool. I
you're
like it, but I
absolutely
really
right.
like that idea for the pictures.
One of the things that I think you do well, and I think there's very few kind of there's few Herald authors out there that go to this level of detail, is your languages and your conlangs.
Oh yeah.
Like coming up with different languages to represent, and not just different languages, but having them be part of that world where the main character, if they're not from that world, they might have to learn a new language or discover some magic to overcome the language barrier or something like that. Not everybody deals with that.
I'm kind of
And
a masochist when it comes
I
to
did maybe, but like there's you and there's one other author that I can think of that does that, and that's about it. Like there's very
well, I
few
mean, just
people.
for me from that creative process, it was just I wanted it to feel lived in, you know?
Yeah,
And because I've been living out of the United States, I've been living in Korea for fuck almost 20 years now. And I've struggled so much with the language. And I'm,
yeah,
conversational with Korean, but I come across translation issues all the time where the way
yeah.
I know how to translate, just because you know the direct translation doesn't mean you know how to use it. And
Yes.
that adds for me, I didn't have to do it, and as you said, there's a lot of authors, magic spell, you can speak the language or something like that, or it's the Star Trek
Yeah.
English, everybody speaks English kind of thing.
Everybody
um
suddenly speaks a universal translator, right? Yeah.
yeah. So luckily with my next series that I'm planning, it's not going to be like Portal Fantasy. Everybody speaks the same language. So I have to do that again because it is hard.
Yeah.
And if someone is watching this thinking like, oh, I want to do that too, it's can be a lot of fun. Like I enjoy coming up with idioms
Yeah.
because idioms. And then one thing I was especially proud of because it is how it works is there's a scene where one character uses an idiom, but it's different from what the other. It's the same meaning, but the phrasing is different. She's like, "Oh, we say it this way, and over in our city, because that's what happens
Yeah.
to language, and it's
Absolutely.
and so yeah, it's fun to do if somebody's like, "Yeah, I'm going to do this too." I'm not going Tolkien level. I'm not inventing a language, but I
No, no,
do
no,
come
no,
up with
no.
idioms. Um, I came up with a joke for like a specific culture joke, and nobody gets it because they're not in that culture. It's like, why is that funny? Well, I think it's hilarious. Well, okay, because that's the
Yeah.
shit that happens when you're mixing cultures and languages and
Oh,
stuff like that.
absolutely.
So
You can't, it's not just like direct translations. It's like so you speak a couple of languages. I speak a couple of languages. As an example, like I in French, and people who anybody who speaks French knows exactly where I'm going with this. If you want to count to 100, the number for 99 is 99, which translates to four twenties and 19.
I think I've heard this before, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, which is like it's not a direct translation, right? Like it's not it, things don't translate directly. And then if you speak French in Paris versus Montreal, like the idioms are different, even though they're speaking the same language. It's a different like they will use different idioms. Things that are funny in Montreal would not be on the streets of Paris and vice versa. So like
Yeah,
absolutely, it's the level of detail that makes the world feel lived in. It makes it feel real.
yeah. So again, people that want to get into this, it's a lot of fun to do these things if you've got the will to do it, but it
Yeah.
is a process. Um, so kind of going into your books a little bit. So tell us a little bit about you've got Royal Blooded. Is that complete or not complete as of this interview?
So as of this interview, books 1 through 4 are released, so you can buy books 1 through 4. Book 5 is already it's written and it's edited,
And
but
you
it
are a
will.
beast, man. I don't know how you do that.
Uh,
And you
I'm
got
a
a kid.
masochist, and I
Yeah.
got yeah no, I'm a bit of a masochist, but once you get into the flow, like it it's hard to stop. I write quite a bit,
Yeah, that is true
and
when the ideas are coming.
yeah, it becomes natural, and you're cranking out through chapters, and it feels really good. So books 1 through 4 done, or books 1 through 5 are written. Books 1 through 4 are already available publicly. Book 5 is coming out in July, and that is the final book in the series. So Royal Blooded is now effectively finished,
Nice. Okay.
and
And that was your first
so
series, right? That's the first
that was my first series.
yeah.
And getting started, I think I made I'm going to call it a mistake for me, because and I'll explain why. But I made a mistake in that I wrote Royal Blooded, and then afterwards I saw the success of it. Like I didn't expect anybody to really read it, and people read it and people liked it, and so I said, oh, okay, well, may, I'm going to follow this up. But instead of writing Royal Blooded 2 right away, I switched gears and I started writing a second series. The series is called Synthesis, and it's a very, very different style. So Royal Blooded is kind of paranormal fantasy, takes place in modern day, but has magical creatures. Very same vein as, or very similar vein as Dragon's Justice, or any one of those other books that are similar to that. Synthesis is science fiction. It's borderline hard science fiction.
Which doesn't come up very
In
often. We tend to be pretty hard fantasy based. You get lit RPG, which
yeah.
has elements of it, but even then, it tends to be fantasy lit RPG with magic and stuff.
No, there's like a couple. Like I'll shout out A.V. Ray, who wrote the wonderful Cosmic Progeny series,
Yeah.
and even going back to Bruce Hentar, he just came out with a science fiction novel as well. It's a space opera,
Mm.
and there's Isaac Keys, who wrote a science fiction novel or science fiction haremlit series as well. But like generally, we don't tend to do a lot of science fiction, and I love science fiction.
Yeah, me too.
Um, in my day job, I'm a bit of a geek. I have a degree in science, so like I love that stuff. And I grew up on Star Trek and Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica, and like I grew up on that stuff. So
Just
I
apropos of nothing, have you read Peter F. Hamilton?
yes, I have.
Oh, nice.
Yes, very,
Yeah,
very good.
Commonwealth Saga is unbelievable.
It's daunting to get
Yeah.
through sometimes. It was daunting to get through, but I loved it. It was
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah. I read
Most
one
of
of
the
his
time
favorite
invested.
books of mine is Fallen Dragon, which was a standalone. Did you read that one?
No, I didn't read that one. Okay,
Yeah, that
maybe I
was
gotta go back and find that.
yeah, it's a standalone book.
Yeah,
But I've always like really connected to that series. There's some things that someone might take issue with towards the end, but I don't know. It's
fair.
a love story kind of in a way, and I'm
Yeah,
kind of a romantic, so I really dug that one. But anyway, yeah, I was just curious.
yeah. So science fiction. So I wrote Royal Blooded one, and I immediately switched gears and wrote science fiction, which and like borderline hard science fiction.
Mm.
Um, it took a lot of inspiration from The Expanse, that TV series, which was it's is underratedly scientifically accurate. And so I wrote the second synthesis right afterwards, and it did well. And my plan was, okay, I'm going to go back and forth between them. I'm going to write one Royal Blooded book, and then I'm going to write one synthesis book. And my idea was that that's going to keep things fresh, right? Like that, I'm never going to get, as a writer, I find, and I don't know if you feel the same way, and other people may feel the same way. I find you can get sometimes um, not tired, but it can be difficult to write the same characters, for a long period of time.
No, yeah,
And
I'm getting that now
yeah,
because we both sort of started this at the same time as far as getting
yeah,
introduced to harem lit, but in the time you've wrote what 7 books, I wrote 2. So
that's
So
fair. Yeah,
I've been living with these characters in my brain now for coming up on maybe f almost 4 years, I would think. 3 years since from
yeah,
concept to, and they've been sort of I wouldn't say obsession, but their story has been tossed around in my brain almost continuously that whole time, even when I wasn't writing because of personal things. The story
yeah,
was always there.
of
And
course. Yeah.
when I started working, I had this idea for the next series I wanted to write. It was like breathing clean air for a second. It doesn't mean I don't love the story that I'm writing, but it's like, oh, this
No,
is new, you know.
absolutely.
Sneeze.
It's all
Excuse
right.
me. Mm. So yeah, no, I
Um,
totally get what you feel is, and like I'm struggling with that now. Is like I don't want to pull the focus away from Throne, but I do want to try to dip my toes into this other story. So I've given myself once I do start writing, I'm trying to finish up a novella now for some side characters. But once I start writing book 3 here in a week or two, I'm going to give
yeah,
myself a rule of 3 chapters of book 3 and 1 chapter of my next series, just to sort of get that story moving and sort of have
yeah.
this other outlet. I'm gonna never done this before, but I'm gonna try. That's sort of my goal with that. Because yeah, it
Well,
does. You need to like air the room out, so to speak, and like change the linens
oh
and
yeah. You get it gets you. It can be refreshing, and of course, writing a new series now, it like diving into a new world has been that I've been in the same two worlds for very much the same way as you have for the last 3.5 years. Um, it's been it's been really refreshing to start a new world of completely clean slate. That being said, the mistake that I had, and maybe this is me, but the thing I struggled with was going in between the two voices,
uh,
because science fiction is very different. As much as they're both harem lit, science fiction is sounds different, feels different than fantasy.
Yeah.
And the characters were very different. And I wanted to make sure that each of the sets of characters had very distinct voices, and then that I wasn't, accidentally bleeding one voice into a different series or something like that. And at one point, I actually, you know, I think this was in Royal Blooded 2. So I'd written Royal Blooded 1 and then Synthesis 1, and then I moved back to Royal Blooded to write the second book in the series. And I accidentally, and a reader very kindly pointed this out to me, I accidentally went to print. I published on Amazon, and I had used the name of the main character in Synthesis, Caden, in place of the name of the main
Uh,
character in Royal Blooded, Eli.
yeah, I
So
did
I
that
mixed the two
inadvertently
up.
with some short stories I was writing, as I found it when I went back to it, it's like, oh, I'm using the wrong character names. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, absolutely. So it happens.
Well, I think I would just
And
to kind of point out too, again, for anybody that's thinking of writing, voicing is so very, very important. And the way I look at it when I'm doing my own stuff is I should be able to tell who is speaking without knowing the name of the character beforehand. And that they should feel distinct in their mannerisms and how they express thoughts and things. And I've read books. One of the early haremlit books I read, I'm not gonna say who it was, but I had trouble. Like if I didn't know who said the thing, I didn't know who was talking. But
mhm,
getting those voicings correct, it really adds so much like flavor to the characters and makes them very distinct and memorable because they should sound different from each other. So definitely something
yeah,
to work on.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So now, what are you most proud of with getting these books out? Obviously you've now finished your first series. It's wrapped up. It's just waiting to go to market.
Mhm.
Um, but like, what is it that like keeps you coming back here and like what like fills you with that fulfillment when you're writing and like how does that work for you? Because it is a
It's
task to write these books. It takes
Oh,
a lot of time, a
absolutely.
lot of effort, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, so to speak.
I think even just finishing a manuscript is an accomplishment by itself. Like you get to that end day, the day when you write those last few words in the manuscript and you call it done, and there's a huge sense of accomplishment
Oh yeah.
associated with that. And um, I love that feeling. Um, I, but the other thing that makes me feel really good is, people writing back to me and people, sending me comments and saying like, "Hey, I loved this," or "I love this series," or, I really liked these books. Like the way when people give me that kind of positive reinforcement, I think that feedback loop makes me want to write more.
Mm.
And at the end of every book, I say, I put in an author's note, and I say like, these books wouldn't exist without the readers. And it sounds kind of, it sounds generic, and it sounds like every author would say that, but I really do believe that. Like if people stopped commenting and reading and caring about about it, then I wouldn't do it anymore.
Mm. Yeah, I'm the same way. Like I just made a comment on my Patreon the other day as like because I had a bunch of new people join up for a reason I'm not going to go into, but I said, hey, for you new people, I don't care if they're on the paid tier or not. They took time out of their day to come to Patreon and sign up. That alone says, hey, man, these people are digging what I'm doing. Um,
Yeah,
and I said, my a longtime patron, I'm sure they're sick of hearing it, but I am so happy that you're here. You guys kind of keep me going,
yeah.
and I am thankful for everybody that they never have to comment, they never have to say a thing. They signed up. They said, hey, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna take because nobody wants to sign up for another website and enter in your email. And it's like, what is the password? And nobody,
No, no, of
it's
course
always
not.
a
Yeah,
drag.
yeah.
So so yeah, when fans when they drop comments or they reviews, yeah, those are so awesome. Like I when I posted my
Yeah,
stuff up on like Literotica, um, the first time, some of those comments, I got emotional. Like they were so like
people, yeah,
the gratitude and the way they were describing it is like, wow, these people they were amazing. So yeah, for those of you who, if you're wondering, do we read the comments? I mean, I read every single comment. Um,
I do as well. I read every single comment,
yeah,
and a lot of the time I will respond to them too. And I know the screen names at least. I don't know the actual names, but I know the screen names of like my regular readers, and I
yeah,
know like when even even if they even when they cross, from one book to another, I recognize them, and I know that they're enjoying it, and that it makes me feel really good.
Yeah. So yeah, that so you guys that take the time to do those kind of comments and stuff,
Please
it's
do.
sort of like it's like caffeine straight into your vein, because I've said
Exactly.
before that the Patreon people more than anything, they sort of keep me honest. They keep me on my game because I feel an
Yeah,
obligation to them more so than anybody else because, they signed up, um
exactly.
and that sort of keeps me motivated. So how do you feel as you've been going now for a few years? How do you feel that you've improved? And do you work on like do you set aside some time to say, okay, I need to learn how to do it in this style, or I need to get better at descriptive writing, or does it just sort
Mm.
of organic and you make note of mistakes as you go along?
I've made an effort, especially after finishing Royal Blood. I really made an effort to learn from other authors. Um, the Brandon Sanderson series was good. The YouTube series, I can't recommend it enough on, how he talks in detail about his process and how to approach writing a book. I think that the talking to other people is always a good thing, and taking feedback and constructive feedback is always an important is important towards improving your craft. And I've tried to go back over, especially the comments, on my Patreon or on Royal Road or even on Amazon. Like I've tried to go back over the comments that were more critical and tried to understand, why did this person react the way that they did, and why did they, is there something that I could do differently in the next book? Now you're never going to be able to please everybody. There's some people that are just going to hate you, or they'll have a bad day and they'll decide that they want to make an angry comment on Amazon, and that's fine.
Mm.
But like, broadly speaking, if the same two or three things comes up in a lot of comments, maybe as an author, I think it's important that you take a look at that and you try and address those comments and try and get better. um, the other thing I do is I try to read. I read quite a bit. I am a reader first and an author second, and I will always stick to that. And when, although as an author, when I'm reading it, it's a little bit different now because now I'm looking at it and I'm not just enjoying the book because of course I am, but I'm also thinking about, what is this person doing differently from me that I can learn from? You know, oh, I really like the way this person structured the plot, or the way that they describe things, or the way that um, the way that they show emotional progression in relationships or whatever it is. And I'll try and emulate that in my own writing. I'll never, copy it exactly. But I think by reading and by thinking about what you like about the book, and I go back to my original point around like making notes on, I took notes on the books that I liked and the books that I didn't, and what did I like about them, you know, going back over those notes and being like, oh, okay, here's some things that I really liked. I'm going to make a concerted effort to do more of that in my next book. I think that's how you get better and you stay on top of your game. And as long as you're trying to get better, then I think that's a big part of like you will get there as long as you're trying, as long as you're making an honest effort. The other thing I'll say is, um, when I started out, I was a guy with a note on my phone and Microsoft Word. There are tools out there that you can use in order to help improve your writing, and I'm not talking about using AI to write or anything. I'm talking about get yourself a good notes app, something that has a little bit of structure to help you, that you can take notes in, that you can bump between all your world building elements, um, and very quickly reference things as you're writing, so it doesn't take you so far out of the flow. The other thing I would say, the other trick that I've learned is, text to speech is a wonderful thing for editing. What I do for all of my books now is I will throw the manuscript into text to speech, even if it's a bit robotic sounding, and I will listen to the words. And what I've learned is that your mind processes written words differently than audible. Uh, and it is much easier to catch typos or missing words or things like that if you hear it than if you see it, trying to see it on a screen. So things like
I've
that.
never done that for writing, like to check for typos, but I will like read back my dialogue scenes
Yeah,
to see how they sound. And I'll even do
yeah, yeah.
voices for the characters and stuff like that. So,
Eh,
and I found that very
Same,
helpful
same,
with
yeah, yeah,
dialogue,
yeah,
because you know good dialogue when you hear it, or you know how does it flow well, does it sound natural? So yeah, I've read it to
yeah,
myself like out loud. I'll sit at my desk and I'll read through the passage a few times again using voices,
yeah.
like I'm an audiobook narrator, and that
That'll
helps me
work.
sort of
Yeah,
But I've never thought about throwing in there to hear for typos, but I pay an editor, so um,
that's fair.
yeah. To talk about what you were saying about saying what you like about a book, I'm trying to finish Dragonbound, Leon West's book that he released with,
Very, very good. Yeah.
yes, what is her name? He co-authored it with. I'm
Oh
so
gosh.
sorry, Leon. I forgot her name. Um, but I sent him a message because I asked him like how much was him and how much was her, and it was almost all her. He was more like a stylistic. If I remember what he said correctly, I don't want to misrepresent what he said, but I'm pretty sure he was more like stylistically involved in helping her like tighten up the plot and stuff. But I said, well, her prose is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I don't know if
There's
you've
some
read
people out there
Dragonbound
that
or not.
just
What is it?
yeah, no, I've read it's Freya Stone
There we go. Yeah, okay.
is Leon West and Freya
Not
Stone.
Jessica. So, but yeah,
And
the prose was
I
so
I
good.
read I read one. I haven't got around to finishing two yet.
Yeah, I'm trying to
But it is
finish the
very, very
first
good.
book, not because I didn't like it, but because I keep it's like, oh, I'll read tomorrow. Oh, I'll read tomorrow.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but that I even sent a letter to or I sent an email to my editor. I was like, hey, how is my prose? And you have any tools I could because reading her was like, I got to step my game up, and that's what I told Leon. I was like, man, that shit's really good. Um, so that's a focus for me going forward. Is like I need to figure out a way to improve my prose,
Yeah.
because I want to improve as a writer. So, so yeah, I kind of understand what you're saying there. Um, well, cool. So let's sort of get into more of the other sort of stuff here and try to wrap it up. Because how are you doing on time? You okay?
I got about 10 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Then just some quick questions here. Anything about the publishing, self-publishing that you would want to let other people know about, like things to be aware of if they're going to
Yeah.
enter into this in the future, like do's and don'ts or best practices for self-publishing?
Um, there's a couple of really good articles out there that will talk through self-publishing, and they'll give lots of really good advice. The one piece that I would hone in on, especially for this genre, is momentum matters. So if you're going to post on, for example, Patreon, um, and you need to build up a catalog, like at least 5, 10, 15 chapters before you start posting. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to be editing, five up till 5 minutes before the post is supposed to go live. You don't want to be caught in a place where you have to be apologizing to your readers and being like, hey, listen, I can't post right now because I've had some family emergency. And like readers will 90% of the time they will understand that. But I've seen quite a few authors or aspiring authors fail because they will, that becomes like the habit. Like every week when if you're not posting regularly, people stop paying attention. And as if you're constantly saying like, hey, no, I'll get to it next week, I'll get to it next week, because you don't have a couple of chapters already built up, then you're going to get yourself into trouble and you're going to lose that momentum.
Yeah, that's what I would try
So
to do is I try to keep at least 10 to 15 chapters ahead of what was on
yep,
Patreon just to
exactly.
give myself a buffer if something happened.
Yeah, you and like stuff happens. We're all humans. Like you have to go take care of a sick relative, or you have to go, something comes up at work or whatever, and you gotta deal with stuff. That's fine. Like I have a full-time job and outside of this, and a family. So like stuff comes up, but having those chapters built up in advance gives you that buffer, gives you that ability to be like, okay, I don't have to push through and write until 2 a.m. and not come up with my best stuff. I can just I can leave it for now and come back to it tomorrow.
Okay. Um, we just kind of, yeah, we probably need to get this going. Um, so let's talk about your really quick your series that's coming up.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that and when readers can expect to find it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the new series it's going to be coming out over the summer, starting on Patreon, on my Patreon. It's called The Iron Lord, and it is a portal fantasy series. It involves a an epic kind of fantasy world, and it's going to it has a brand new set of characters, and I think I'm giving you a bit of an exclusive view here because I don't think I've talked to anybody else outside of anybody else really about what it's about. It's going to delve deep into some the myths about Fae and the Fae culture and those sort of the Northern European view of what makes a fey creature.
Hmm.
Um, it also has quite a bit of it's going to be built on there. It's going to have a few steampunk elements. There's going to be humans involved in the story, and they will have they're going to have a very interesting mixture of magic and sort of Victorian era 1800s technology. So if you've ever watched the Netflix series Arcane, that's the vibe and the feel that we'll be going for with the humans. And it follows the story of a main character who is, without giving too much away, I'm going to say he is in search of his brother, and that's
Okay.
all I'm going to say so far.
And is that all plotted out? Do you know how many books you're going to have on that one, or are you just kind of seeing how it goes?
So it's gonna be 5 books, I think. I might have to split one of them into two, so it might end up being six. Book one is already written, and I'm going through the editing process now. And I will say, out of all of the books that I've written so far, this one is far and away the one that I'm most proud of. The kind of ongoing joke within a lot of the within a lot of the authors that I speak to is, you need to write 1 million words before you write something worthwhile or you write something you think is worthwhile. Um, I it it's taken quite a bit of practice to get there, but I am very proud of the way that this first book has come together.
Awesome. Well, we wish you luck with that. I'll be looking for it. So I do have some rapid fire questions.
Hit me.
Just very quick answers. Don't really need much of an explanation. First one, pineapple on pizza, yay or nay?
Yay, absolutely.
All right. Now you mentioned you're a Star Trek fan, Kirk or Picard?
Hard. I grew up with TNG.
Okay. Zeppelin or Pink Floyd?
Zeppelin.
Nice. Your guilty pleasure movie, the one that you don't really like to. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Shut up. I like it. Be quiet.
The A Team, the one that came out with Bradley Cooper and Liam Neeson, a couple in like 2008, I think.
I don't think I watched that. I know of it, but I don't recall ever watching it. Okay.
It's
Um,
terrible and very good and very good
yeah, for me
at the
it's
same time.
one of my worst like is like Hackers. Love that movie
Yep.
unapologetically. I
Yeah.
love Hackers. So, is there a world record you think you could beat?
Oh God. Uh, not off the top of my head, no.
Okay. Your favorite curse word?
uh, I'm going to profanity warning. Cunt.
Okay, yeah, there you go. I teach English, and that's come up a couple times where like in American English, that's still one of like that's the big one that we can't really say that one.
Yeah,
It's very
but
common in
in
England and Australia especially, but for in Americans, we that's like the last one is like oh we can't say that. So
yep. No, no.
all right, and last one here. What movie will you always watch if you catch it on TV, channel surfing or whatnot?
This one's a weird one for me because I'm not a huge baseball fan, but Moneyball.
Was that the is that what what's his face?
That's with
Brad
Brad
Pitt?
Pitt. Yeah, it's something about people overcoming the system because they outsmart it. I think that that's always an appealing narrative.
Okay, right on. Well, cool. All right, man. Well, that's going to wrap it up. Like I said, I know you got something you got to do today. Thank you so much for sitting down. I will probably get this posted within the next day or so. It's the weekend for us here, and I don't have any plans for Saturday or Sunday, so it will be
Amazing.
doing stuff like this and hopefully getting my novella finished. But tell people where they can find you.
You can find me you can find me on Amazon. You can find me on Royal Road, Scribble Hub, and Patreon. And if none of those work, you can find me at fgsmithauthor.com. That's my personal website, and you can find links to all of my stuff there.
Okay, cool. And of course, I will put all that in the video description when this goes live. All right, man. Well, thank you again. This has been fun, and I
Yeah,
look
this
forward
is
to
fun.
talking to you
Thank
again
you for
soon.
having me.
I'm still
All right,
waiting for you to get
thank
back to
you.
me on my outline. Yeah.
I owe you that one. I'll do that today. Thanks so much.
Cool. All right, man. Well, have a great day.
You as well. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.